Well, good evening and welcome to Southside High School. My name is Tatiana Shea. I'm the principal here, and we are just absolutely thrilled to host SCE TV's Symposium on Education. Thank you to our distinguished guests for joining us this evening on this very important topic. You know, Southside High School is considered a school of high poverty. And one of the things that we know and that we deeply believe is that income does not have anything to do with your intelligence, your creativity, your grit, your desire, your desired outcomes in life. And we know this to be true. And so we are laser focused on making sure that our students get the best academic opportunities available to them. We have partnered with some wonderful community partners like REWA and Founders Bank to make these things come true. And we just find that this particular day is a really awesome way for us to celebrate all things that we know about Southside, that our students, our staff, and our faculty are some of the best in this nation. If you come here and you meet these kids, you're going to know what amazing future people they are going to be. So again, thank you from the bottom of my heart for joining us today. I hope you have a wonderful evening.
Good evening, and welcome to SCE TV's Community Forum on Education Tour. This is our second tour, and we're delighted to host this conversation at Southside High School in Greenville, South Carolina. We want to welcome our friends joining us via live stream. The theme of our conversation this evening is funding our future, the dollars, decisions, and partnerships that drive education. We want to discuss the realities of school funding and its impact on students, families, and communities across South Carolina. My name is Dr. Reynard Harris, host of SC Public Radio's Teachable Moments, and I'm honored to guide tonight's discussion. As a public media organization, our mission is to inform, engage, and elevate conversations that matter to the people of South Carolina. Tonight, we're here as a neutral convener, committed to facts, transparency, and productive dialogue. The goal of this discussion is less an examination of how education is funded in our state, but an exploration of how those funding decisions shape student success, economic mobility, and the future of our workforce. Education is one of the most significant investments we make as a society. Yet, school funding remains a complex and often contentious issue. Public schools are funded primarily through a combination of local, state, and federal dollars, but challenges shaped by property taxes, economic condition, and historical policies exist. How do these funding structures impact per pupil spending? And most importantly, how do these financial realities affect the experiences and outcomes of the students sitting in our classrooms today? We also want to share stories of inspiration and success. We're joined this evening by an esteemed panel of subject matter experts, including policymakers, education leaders, and most importantly, students, whose voices are essential in any conversation about the future of learning. We have Dr. Matthew Lavery. Dr. Lavery serves as a Deputy Director for the South Carolina Education Oversight Committee. Prior to coming to EOC in 2021, he taught at the secondary level for 8 years before earning a doctorate in educational research methodology, measurement, and analysis from the University of Central Florida. Also joining the conversation is Dr. Garrick Hampton. Dr. Garrick Hampton is the Associate Director for the Office of Student Affairs at the South Carolina Commission on Higher Education. He currently has oversight of the state scholarship and grant team and manages the Life and SC Hope scholarship programs and the South Carolina residency program. Amplifying student voices is critical to SCE TV's mission. We're excited to have Southside High School sophomore, Nautica Jamison, joining us. Nautica serves as president of the sophomore class and participates in several student activities. Next, we have Greenville City Councilwoman Dorothy Dow. Dorothy is a longtime resident of Greenville and serves on multiple boards and committees focusing on economic development. And rounding out the panel, we have Dr. Edward Anderson, Executive Director of On Track Greenville at the United Way of Greenville County. He's also a former school principal in Greenville County and serves on the Board of Directors for the Children's Trust of South Carolina. Also joining us are a few front row guests who will be invited to join the conversation a little later, and esteemed President and CEO of SCE TV, Adrian Farewell. We invite you to listen, engage, and ask questions with the understanding that this issue is not just about numbers, it's about people. It's about students who dream, educators who dedicate their lives to teaching, and communities working to ensure that every child, regardless of zip code, has access to quality education. You can submit questions by writing them on the index cards provided and passing them to the assistant in the aisle. Those joining us on social media can submit questions via the chat. Our student volunteers are moving through the audience. Jada Samuel, Miss South Carolina 2023, is our social media correspondent for the night. She'll be connecting our audience online. With that, let's begin. The state of South Carolina makes education funding and outcomes data available to the public through several resources. You have the South Carolina Education Funding Dashboard, powered by the South Carolina Revenue and Fiscal Affairs Office, and Dashboard SC, powered by the SC Education Oversight Committee. Dr. Lavery and Councilwoman Dowd, what are the biggest misconceptions about how public schools are funded, and how would you clarify the facts? Dr. Lavery?
So, Dr. Harris, I really appreciate part of what you said in your opening, that it's not about numbers, it's about people. And one of the misconceptions that I hear in school funding is that we want to improve student achievement, so we should put more money in. And more money doesn't automatically mean more student achievement, right? It can help, absolutely, but how that money is used is critically important. So in 22, as the school funding formula was being revised here in South Carolina, the staff at the EOC had the opportunity to get a certificate in education finance from Georgetown. And through that process, we heard time and again that schools and districts can spend the same amount of money and see wildly different outcomes. But more interestingly, they can spend the same amount of money in very similar ways, essentially on the same things, and still see very, very different outcomes. It seems as though what you do matters, but what matters more might be why and how we do it.
Repeat that last line.
What we do matters, but what is probably more important still is why and how we do it.
Why and how we do it. Councilwoman Dow.
So I think, excuse me, first of all, let me say thank you for having me, and thank you to SCE TV for coming to Greenville and broadcasting from the wonderful Southside High. The city of Greenville is funded through multiple streams. The two largest streams are from property tax revenue and business license revenue, and those are based on the property tax portion that the city receives is based on a set millage on your property tax bill. What comes to the city doesn't then funnel to the school district, and what comes to the school district doesn't then funnel to the city. But really, I think, you know, for a taxpayer, you know, I don't think they differentiate, you know, different streams necessarily. They are a taxpayer and they expect something in return for that. I think the space where tax dollars that come to the city benefit students indirectly are the city's investments in things that matter to students, such as recreation facilities, our beautiful open spaces, our parks, our trails. Certainly infrastructure matters. The safety of infrastructure, particularly around schools, matters, and that is funded by the city. You know, we're in the process of focusing a lot on pedestrian safety, and especially around schools. That's critical to us, and that's on the city to make sure that we are making our access to schools from a physical infrastructure standpoint as safe as we can. The other thing that we talk a lot about at the city that's a significant investment because it's amazingly expensive is our sidewalks, for example. So we love students walking to school, and I can say high schools love students walking to school rather than driving because we're under parking pressures at some of the high schools in the city. So when we rank areas for sidewalk investment, proximity to a school, particularly at the early education ages, the grade school ages and middle school, you know, elevates a certain area above an area that is not as close to a school. So those are the ways that the city is expending the money that comes in ways that directly impact students. I was talking earlier before we got started about a lot of the long-term investments we make in the city and how we grow. I look at it in terms of, you know, this may be something that's 10 or 20 years down the road, something I may actually not ever experience myself, but the students will. And, you know, if we build it for them, then I think we're on the right direction. You know, they're young now, but we want them to experience life, And we want them to come back and call Greenville home and bring their time and talents here and work in Greenville and bring their business opportunities to Greenville.
Dr. Lavin spoke about why. It sounds like you're speaking about your role, play your role, play your position, and be responsible for the students as well.
Well, and accountable to them.
And
I mean, I feel accountable to them, certainly.
Hey, we had to hear from a student, right? It's about you all. Ms. Nautica Jameson, do you feel like students understand how schools are funded? What do you think students want to know about school funding? Do you talk about it? How does it work? Give us the inside scoop on how students operate.
I don't think that students really understand like how schools are funded because that's not really something that we look at. We mainly just want to come to school, learn, and talk to our friends. As a student, before I was given the opportunity to actually learn about what school funding is, I always wonder like how does it work and like who's in control of how schools are funded, what schools get more funding than others, and how would that impact us in the long run?
So you have a really important role. You're the president of the class. Is that this year? Congratulations.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
So will you make it part of your agenda to speak to your classmates about funding and how it operates?
Now that I know more about it, I will. I plan to run again next year, so that will be part of my campaign. I will teach my peers more about school funding and how it's important to us.
Thank you. Thank you for those responses. Another education accountability requirement is the publication of school report cards. Per the SC Education Accountability Act of 1998, the enabling legislation for SC school report cards, measures was put in place to improve teaching and learning so that students are equipped with a strong foundation and have the knowledge, skills, and opportunity to be college ready, career ready, and life ready for success in the global, digital, and knowledge-based world of the 21st century. In the last reporting year, about 106,000 students in grades 3 through 12 attended a school that received a below average rating, about 90,000 students, or an unsatisfactory rating, about 16,000 students. Moreover, the SCEOC makes the K-12 SC Ready Proficiency by Per Pupil Expenditure Dashboard available to the public. This dashboard compares the amount of dollars spent per pupil, the percentage of pupils in poverty, and SC Ready performance. From this data, education decisions are made. Via direct statement from the SC School Report site, one of them reads, the South Carolina Department of Education, the State Board of Education, and the Education Oversight Committee share a united vision. By 2030, 75% of students will be performing at or above grade level, and every child will graduate ready for college, career, or military service. The SC General Assembly has committed to funding this ambitious goal, which means that the per pupil expenditure for SC students will increase. Dr. Lavery, if more money doesn't mean more achievement, what does?
That's a great question. So there are several elements that go into supporting student achievement, and it is important to have a sufficient investment in all of them. High quality instructional materials are critically important, but great materials in the hands of an ill-prepared teaching force can't have the same effect. So high quality instructors, instructional staff, support staff, all the personnel that go into making schools work are critically important. Facilities, equipment, all of those things are important. But no one of those items is necessarily going to accelerate student achievement by itself. So if any one of those things is lacking, it can hinder student success. I like to think of it as multiplicative. 100 times 100 times 100 times 0 is still 0, right? So if we've got a gap, a need that's zeroing us out, we definitely need to address that and make sure that all of those areas, every aspect that supports student success, is brought up to an appropriate level. And so we really need to look for those needs, but I will tell you the thing that really seems to make the biggest difference is our investment in people. Expertise in the building, teachers who deeply care about their students, who are equipped to meet the educational needs of those students, support systems, filled with people who are committed to student success, the people make the biggest difference.
So if, you know, sometimes we think though, I think, if you use best what you know best. Should the material meet the teacher? I mean, if the teacher's here, find material that he, she, or they can use as their best sword to swing. I mean, if the material's here and the teacher's here or vice versa, that mismatch I think you're implying is, I mean, should the teacher find the resource that the teacher can use best and will best to communicate with the student?
Pardon me, sorry. And I totally understand that perspective, and really appreciate making sure that teachers are equipped with the materials that can support their expertise. One of the challenges that we face, though, is that there's so many instructional materials freely available on the internet or even available at a low cost. There's so many resources that educators can draw from that aren't necessarily based on sound research or aligned with South Carolina standards. And so I hesitate to throw a number out there because I can't think of the reference to cite to validate it, but a very large proportion of available materials that you can just go out and get are below grade level. And we need to make sure that our students are encountering rigorous content and being brought to grade level so that they can meet the challenge. The grade level expectations are staggered throughout their schooling, steadily increasing, and if we're below grade level early on and keep missing that mark, the gap gets wider.
Thank you. So not all matters related to student performance rest with the student. To Dr. Anderson and Councilwoman Dow, how do socioeconomic barriers such as transportation, housing insecurity, or access to technology impact school attendance and student achievement? Dr. Anderson.
So you can't talk about students of poverty without talking about equity in the same conversation. So when we bring up this conversation or this word around equity, we're talking about giving each student or each school the tools and resources they need to be successful. So when you look at how many students are living in poverty, how many students are currently homeless, living in motels, living in cars, couch surfing at friends or family members' houses, you're talking over 1,000 students in this particular area that impacts. So when students walk in each day, they're walking in with challenges associated, as you said, with unstable housing. Maybe they don't have a medical home, and so their health conditions are exacerbated that may prevent them from being able to focus in class. You're talking about lack of transportation. So as Councilwoman Dow talked about, the city investing in a place where our students can really live, play, work, raise a family. If our students don't have access to transportation, then how are they getting to those particular resources? One of the things that we know to be true is that with what we do with On Track's work is that attendance, behavior, and course performance are the leading indicators to high school graduation.
Could you repeat that?
Attendance, behavior, and course performance are the leading indicators for high school graduation, and we call those the ABCs. And so if we're not positively putting in place measures that impact attendance, behavior, and course performance, then our students will never reach that mark. And a part of that is prohibited by barriers associated with poverty. Again, if they can't get to those things. One of the other things that we talk about with the ABCs are the little ones, and those are agency, belonging, and connection. Students have to have a sense of agency where they feel like if they speak up, their voice matters. They have to have a sense of belonging, meaning that no matter where I go, especially in my classroom or my school or in my home, that I belong there, and a sense of connection. They have to be connected to other adults or their peers. So that equates to a positive climate culture and positive engagement. So if playing on a sports team, participating in a club, all those things get me feeling like my voice matters and I belong and I found my connection, but I can't get there, or I'm always sick, so I can't participate, or housing is unstable and so I'm moving from house to house every year, then I will never feel that sense of agency, belonging, and connection. I will never reach my full potential in terms of attendance, behavior, and course performance. And my chances of graduating from high school will have significantly decreased as a result.
Thank you. And Councilwoman Dow, before you answer specifically to the question, this idea of attendance, behavior, and course performance, although it's not you all's purview in terms of the city, do you think in terms of that, as you mentioned sidewalks earlier, but in terms of attendance, behavior, and course performance and how you all engage, do you think in that manner at all in terms of students?
You know, to be candid, I don't wake up thinking about school attendance and you know, course performance. Those aren't the wheelhouses I work in every day, but the wheelhouses I do work in every day are housing and transportation. And he said it, you know, so well. And Greenville has a shocking number of homeless children, very right around where we are and beyond. You know, it's not, and it's through no fault of their own. I don't know, you know, I could make that case. It's no child chose to be housing insecure or homeless. And imagine then if a couch surfing or a motel living or living out of a car then compounded to you having to change schools regularly. You know, how do you ingrain yourself in that community if it's the fourth school you've been in the school year? You know, the fourth set of teachers. How do you have continuity across the curriculum? You know, all of those things, I just, you know, cannot imagine the strain that puts on a student, and as a result, the strain on the teachers and the strain on the school. And so where does the city come into play here? The city is making a record number of investments in providing more access to affordable housing. And affordable housing is a topic unto itself in terms of what does it mean to be affordable. It's not for this discussion. Another one, I hope SCETV will come back to Greenville. But, you know, the point is to provide housing. You know, if Greenville is to be the best city in the world, I think it is, and I'd like it to continue to be, but it has to be accessible to everyone, right? And to do that, you have to have housing available to people at all levels of earning. Similarly, on the transportation point, we talk about transportation a lot in Greenville, and transportation can mean different things to different people. To a student, it might mean, you know, well, I ride the bus and I have to be out on the bus stop at 6:45 in the morning. I mean, it's dark at 6:45 in the morning. Or for a high school, it might mean, you know, I'm riding the bus is late, or I have to ride with a friend and their car broke down, whatever it may be. But reliable transportation is inherent to being successful in school. If you're not on time, you've already started out the day wrong. In our city realm, in terms of transportation, you know, we work in the public transit space, the space of Greenlink and public transportation, but also, again, to make those pathways to a school easier for a student if they're getting there by bicycle or if they're walking. The last thing that you didn't touch on that I think is important and is getting elevated in the conversation in the community is I don't think a student can be successful in school, or they're certainly more challenged if they're hungry. And the school, you know, provides a lot in terms of nutrition and meals, but again, if that child is homeless at night, they're not getting a meal. Or if they live in an area where they don't have transportation to get to a grocery store. So the city has been focusing on trying to recruit more grocery stores, affordable grocery stores, to our special emphasis neighborhoods. That takes a lot of partnerships, a lot of work. There's a lot that goes into the formula of a grocery store planning to come to Greenville. But I'm glad it's at least in the conversation now and we have a focus on it, because that's the first step.
Thank you. And I really love that line of no fault of their own, and the accountability you speak to.
Mm-hmm.
Ms. Jamison, you know, a lot of talk here, right? And you're the student. You're the one of these things that are impacting you and your peers. Follow up with student perspective. How do you see this play out among your peers? How does it impact learning, participation, and/or friendship?
As far as participation, I know I'm a part of a lot of clubs, and I know a lot of my peers, they're like, oh, I want to join, but I don't have a ride to get to and from. And I feel like that downplays a lot of potential that students have, because they miss that opportunity of joining a club or joining a sports team. And I just feel like overall, students wish to be more active around school, but if you don't have the transportation, then there's no way for that to happen. And yeah.
It's a powerful statement, right? You want to engage. You know, sometimes we say you all are not, you're on your phones, you're not doing anything, but
Yes,
it sounds like you're saying we want to be a part of this.
Yes,
but,
sir.
but it lacks some opportunity to travel. That's
Yes,
powerful.
sir.
Thank you. Dr. Hampton, we've been considering this from the K-12 perspective. Can you shed light on workforce development? How do you see these issues playing out in college access and persistence?
Yeah, first, thank you for having me in the conversation.
Yes, sir.
I think one of the things we have to think about is there's a real connection between some of these same socioeconomic issues that we're seeing in the K-12 as they translate into the higher ed community as well. When a student, I'll piggyback off transportation because I think that's kind of where we're going. Too many times we've seen students in positions where they're having to make a short-term decision for short-term benefit over a long-term down the road benefit. Right. So if a student's faced with a choice of getting my brakes fixed or getting new tires on the car as opposed to paying for these classes, they're going to pick the car. They're going to do that immediately. And what we have to do or continue to do is find ways to address those cost concerns and those access concerns. Our institutions are doing a really good job partnering with nonprofit and local community agencies to kind of address some of those concerns, but obviously there's more that could be done. In terms of how this translates into the workforce, I think the conversation has to continue to shift. We are at a place now where our economy is changing in South Carolina, and 80% of the jobs that we have right now require some type of post-secondary credential. Now, could be a 2-year, could be a certificate, could be a 4-year. But all of the jobs we're looking at now and the ones that are to come are looking for some type of post-secondary credential. That conversation has to be one that we have in our schools so that students understand you may not want to go to college immediately, but at some point we are seeing more and more folks have to go back to school and retool.
You know, wow, it's such a challenge. I mean, I keep imagining a moat, and that moat is basic needs. I mean, I hear you saying, until these basic needs are met, these other steps that society's moving toward, you aren't going to be able to reach them. I mean, how do you respond to basic needs? What are your thoughts on that? I mean, you mentioned a car breakdown. You can't. How do you respond?
So it's hard. Everybody has, you know, the things that they view as in their hierarchy of needs. We all try to follow those types of situations. I think we all have to do our part to try to support students and meet them where they are, and that's hard. But leveraging the resources in the community, our nonprofit organizations, some of the funding that you can use from the state, from the lottery, those are all things that we can do to try to help students bridge that gap. Because we know if we can reduce some of those costs, if we can reduce some of those other things that they're having to think about, and they can focus solely on their academic success, that's how we're going to get them there.
What a paradox. Too many irons in the fire, and those irons in the fire are basic needs. I'd like to just quickly go through the group and talk about these basic needs, these multiple irons in the fire. If we can use the word reduce that, we can respond to the basic needs. Anything to share in terms of basic needs and too many responsibilities that are forced upon a student that can't get to the higher steps?
Yes, so in our schools, as a former principal at the highest poverty middle school in this county, I can recall specifically receiving allocations for general funds. And those general funds would help cover technology and my staff. It would cover books, some of those vital, what we call tier 1, everyone has access to resources. And then you had your tier 2 supports. And that tier 2 were for your small group of students that maybe face a particular challenge, like some of those basic needs that you're talking about. And that's where our social worker kicked in, that's where our school counselors kicked in, but sometimes that wasn't enough. And that's where, to their point, we needed our nonprofits to tag team with the school in order to serve that particular group, that population. And then you had your tier 3 where you had individual students coming in with trauma, or you had a student who experienced a fire over the weekend. Then what? How do we handle that? Because the school has been equipped at that tier 1 level to provide teachers, to educate our students, to make sure that they're successful. The school cannot do it alone. It requires community-wide support, and it requires every single individual. It requires the village mentality. And oftentimes I believe that sometimes we focus too much on funding as in dollars, as opposed to funding as in capital. And capital can mean time, it can mean your resource, it can mean spiritual capital, it can mean all sorts of capital, right? And so there's ways that all of us as community members can provide capital to a school to support, no matter what school you go to, regardless of socioeconomic status, they are going to need your capital in order to serve Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3, all of your students, because there is a student in every school, at least one, that is homeless, that has clothing issues, housing instability, medical issues, and if we don't specifically and intentionally partner with the community and with our families, then we will never reach the needs of all of our students.
Thank you, Dr. Anderson. Councilwoman Dow.
You know, I think he said over and over again the key word is community, and that sounds a little cliche, me saying it, but it really, I just can't tell you what community support we have in this city and how fortunate it's unique to Greenville. Everybody is willing to step up, and I guess we're here to say we need you, you know. Thank you, and please keep doing it. Greenville has been a very philanthropic community historically. A lot of the success of Greenville has come from those public-private partnerships, our nonprofit support, and that needs to continue. It's needed now more than ever. I did want to touch on the workforce aspect of it, that in my role, a lot of what I see as my job is to provide the workforce for the businesses that are interested in coming to Greenville. One of the things a business will look at in recruitment is what kind of workforce do you have? And they're going to zero in very keenly on our education system. Greenville, the public school system, I'm a proud parent of public school kids. I think the public school system does a great job and raises amazing citizens. And I think our technical college program is also amazing. And of course, our higher education speaks volumes as well. But not every student is ready for that, right? And the last thing we want to do in terms of post high school, maybe they want to be in the workforce for a little while and get their feet under them, or maybe their family, that's the choice they have to make. You know, there are jobs at the city of Greenville that you can go to work in straight out of high school, and we are actively recruiting constantly to the jobs that we have that pay well and provide a key aspect that students may not think about as much, and we provide great benefits. So I'm always putting in a plug, please look at employment opportunities at the city of Greenville, and I imagine the county and our other municipalities have the same challenges. But I have to commend our school system. You know, I'm a proud parent of a 31 and a 29-year-old that came up through this school district, the Greenville County School District, and I think the school district provides as much challenge and opportunity that a student can want. Again, it's about making sure they all have access to it, right? But always, I think the schools are instrumental in helping us raise good citizens. You know, they really do an amazing job in that, and that's as important as calculus and literature and all the other things they might be studying.
Thank you. And Ms. Jamison, I know you don't speak for all students. Any of these ideas attractive to you? Anything they're sharing?
From my perspective,
Please.
personally, I think that I agree with what has been said. I believe it takes a village, and working with these nonprofits to actually lend that helping hand, I feel like that gives high school students and students in general that extra oomph that they need to prosper in life.
Fantastic, thank you. And Dr. Laffer, we didn't share with you. I mean, anything to share on this topic?
I love everything about the conversation that we're currently having. And so a lot of the themes that have come up are themes that resonate with some research that we've been doing at the EOC. And so a little bit of background. We looked at 2023 report card data and did a deep dive on those numbers and realized that of all the students in the state that attend a school that receives an excellent overall rating, 44% of them are identified as pupils in poverty. But when we look at all the students in the state that attend a school that received a below average or unsatisfactory rating, 77% of them are identified as pupils in poverty. But we also know that household income does not necessarily mean destiny. There are schools serving 77% pupils in poverty or higher who received an excellent overall rating. And so we asked ourselves, what are they doing? And so we kicked off a 2-year study, first looking at elementary schools. We actually finished our data collection yesterday. I went to a school yesterday for that. It was fantastic. And our question really has been, we're interviewing teachers, we're interviewing parents, we're interviewing the school leader, district staff, school staff. We're trying to figure out, what are you doing that's getting these results? And the single biggest common thread is that everybody involved, everybody at the school, everybody in the community, everybody involved has a deeply held, shared belief that every single kid in this building can achieve at high levels. They believe it to their core, and they have a shared responsibility to make that happen.
It's powerful.
And that really resonates with your agency, belonging, and connection. And those aren't words that we've necessarily applied to those data, but now that it's in my head, it might show up, because that's a really good way to characterize what we've heard at our Batois schools. I'm sorry, we call it the Beating the Odds Investigative Study. And when you write that as an acronym, it looks like a French word, so I pronounce it Batois.
So that leads me to my next question, actually. You know, as storytellers, we like to amplify the proofs of success and impact in our state. I was going to ask, what innovative approaches have schools or districts taken to supplement traditional funding sources and close resource gaps? And you mentioned this Batois.
Batois.
Yeah, please tell us more.
Well, and this is actually great, because at a lot of the Batois schools, they have extensive partnerships in the community, right? We've asked every single school, how would you describe the culture here? And every single one of them have used the word family, right? And what I know about family is that, you know, in my extended family, there's a couple of knuckleheads,
Sure,
right?
Sure.
But we're still in it. We love each other. We're in this together.
That's right.
We're connected. And that resonates so much with what I've seen there. And they are reaching out and making the community family too.
Fantastic.
In one of our parent interviews, we had somebody from a local factory who doesn't even have a kid in the school in the room for the parent interview, because the principal of the building said, you cannot talk to our parents and not also talk to the person who's running our mentorship program, because everybody in that factory has a mentor in this school that they meet with regularly, because somebody needs to connect with and invest in every single one of our kids.
Powerful.
That's how we drive amazing results for our students.
It's incredibly strong. Dr. Hampton, is dual enrollment an innovative approach for closing resource gaps? And if so, how so?
Yeah, dual enrollment is absolutely a really good resource to closing some of those gaps. There's so many positives to dual enrollment. I think the first, obviously, is you get closer to a credential while you're in high school. You can use lottery tuition assistance to help you with that. So really, the state is supporting you in that effort. To do it for a year, to do it for 2 years, you could actually walk out of high school with that credential, which is a positive, and then you can go straight into the workforce from there. I think the other positive, obviously, that we've seen is that in areas that are rural or areas that are underserved, you have students that are able to get the experience of taking a college course. And what that does for them is it teaches them that they can do college work. And at that point, the hope and what we've seen is that this actually encourages them to go further when they go to seek post-secondary after high school graduation. So yeah, dual enrollment is a very good thing.
This idea of proof of concept. You can do it. You get to explore in a safe place. You know you can, which encourages you to move forward.
Absolutely.
Fantastic. So we love solutions-oriented thinking. As we bring this segment to a close, I want to know, what role can businesses, philanthropists, and public-private partnerships play in school funding solutions? A couple of folks want to jump in as we close out. Any suggestions?
I'll
Please.
tell you something that's been a great success. The only limitation it is the number of positions, but our Greenville Chamber has done created the Launch Greenville program, which provides internships for high school students, juniors and seniors, to have a paid internship in our local businesses. So I'll tell you the story of a student I once worked with. She had told me, I'm going to University of XYZ, and I had said, I don't think that's going to happen unless you start doing something differently, and she did. And she wanted to go into sports management, and she got the internship through Launch Greenville with the Greenville Drive, and spent the summer working for the Greenville Drive, everything from serving concessions to being back of house with the team to being in the C-suite with the owners. And she ended up going to XYZ University in sports management and is now in graduate school working in an internship with Nike in Oregon. And so my point in that example, and I use the example a lot, is that that real world experience affirmed what she wanted to do. And that's where the student wins, because that experience, maybe you would have an experience where it turned, learning what you don't want to do is as important as learning what you do want to do. I think all of y'all, might have had that experience, and that's hard to convey to a student because they think they know what they want to do, and that's, but they feel like they failed if they did something and didn't enjoy it. No, it's just as valuable learning that. But those things, those opportunities for students cannot happen unless our business community partners. And that's what's critical, I think, to that community aspect of it.
Anyone have a quick brief, please?
I'd be remiss if I didn't say this. So the work that I do with On Track Greenville is 100% a public-private partnership to support schools, students in Greenville County. And so about 10 years ago, Greenville County Schools and United Way formed a partnership. And within that partnership, it was, let's create an entity that can seek out grants and other supports to truly help our students stay on track to graduate from high school on time. And so instead of implementing resources in the high school, we implemented resources in the 6th grade. And so we chose the highest poverty middle schools and then matriculated up into those 2 high schools in Greenville County. And so got a large federal grant, got some business dollars, some community dollars, and so forth. So true collective impact where the community came together and said, let's fund this thing. And what we were able to do was able to work with Prisma Health to provide a school-based health center for those students in those schools. So once a week, there's a nurse practitioner there, writing prescriptions, doing vaccinations, providing students with sports physicals so they can play that sport, after-school programming, mental health supports, teacher supports, and then track those interventions over time to make sure our students are staying on track. And then we became more of a solutions hub around identifying trends around attendance, behavior, and course performance, putting in programs and partners that are effective, and then seeing if it works. And so over time, the district has been able to amplify some of those partners and practices across the district once we've shown, like you said before, proof of concept that this does work in our schools for our students that are at greatest risk. And the reason why we started at the middle school is because students drop out in high school physically, but they mentally disengage in middle school.
Powerful close. And the idea of collective impact and sincere relationship with students is clearly a theme that cuts through. Now we'll open the floor for your questions and insights. This is your chance to share your experiences and offer solutions. Let's keep the conversation forward-thinking and collaborative as we explore ways to work together to create better outcomes for all of our students. Let's check in with our social media correspondent, Ms. Jada Samuels.
Hello. Thank you, Dr. Harris.
You're welcome.
We have quite a few questions from our audience online, and we have some questions from our audience members here live at Southside High School. Our audience members who are interested in learning more about BTOIS, or Batois, they want to know if these schools are successful with large funding pots. Are they rural? Are any of them local? What specific examples can you highlight?
Well, you get me started talking about this, we'll be here all night. So we've looked at elementary schools. We're going to move into secondary level starting next year. And these are not incredibly heavily funded schools. Most of the ones that we've seen have been rural, which sort of makes sense when I see the strong community theme. and the sorts of connections have been very deep local connections, right? And so this hasn't been something that a great deal of money has gone in to support, although they do have Title I funds to support what they're doing, and there's, but it hasn't been a huge funding push that made the difference. It had been finding people who were deeply committed to the work and building a shared culture of excellence.
So we know that if improvement takes the whole community, what can members of the community do to advocate for better strategic school spending?
Please.
So one of the things that community members can do, first thing they can do, is go to school board meetings so they know exactly how money is being spent, what it's being spent on, and can utilize time during those meetings to share what they feel is most important to their community. Another way is to get involved in nonprofits that are doing that educational work. Like Public Education Partners is a great way. There's a lot of collaboratives like the Greenville Mentoring Collaborative. If you're really interested in mentoring, a community member can go to the Greenville Mentoring Collaborative and ask them, hey, I want to know more about how we can get more mentors in schools. How can I use my voice? So I would say go to the experts, go to the school board to figure out what it's being spent on, because you might find out it is being spent. As was said earlier, there is funding going towards it. It just may not be the outcome you want. But other times it's going to those experts that are doing this work and asking them how to best advocate. I would also say the United Way is also a resource that is obviously all across the state. And because they're tapped into the school districts, they will be a great resource to at least get you to those experts.
Ms. Samuel, just really quickly, this idea of collective impact and getting others involved, how do you motivate the unmotivated? How do you educate those who feel they didn't even know they had a role in this? Any suggestions about, I mean, folks are living their day-to-day lives, they're living beautiful lives, and I don't think people who maybe not even have kids in school think their part may be done. But I hear you all saying everyone still has a responsibility, well, not responsibility or accountability, responsibility or role. How would you motivate the unmotivated or educate those who feel that they thought their part was over since their kids are adults and moved on? Is there any way to bring them back to that fold?
You hit the nail on the head for something I wanted to bring up. Just because your kids aren't in the school system doesn't mean the school system isn't serving your community, or that it's not, that you shouldn't consider yourself a stakeholder. You know, the school system is producing our future residents. Hopefully, we want them to stay, our future citizens. And so investment in what matters to students is a lifetime value-added point of advocacy, in my view, whether you had schools in the system or not. And you know, I think it's important to remember that even when your kids are long out of the school system. Now, to ask someone to come volunteer in schools before they've ever had a student in the system, or if they're long past that time of their life, maybe that's not the role they want to play. But I think in any given school, there's a role for, schools are more than willing to meet citizens where they are and use their time and talents to help with that. And I think, like to your point, a great place to start is school board activity and what's going on and being discussed in those meetings, just to learn.
Fantastic. Ms. Samuel, I apologize, please.
Well, we have some audience members that do have a few questions for you, so I want to invite up one of our audience members to join me for the opportunity to ask our panelists a question. So join me here. First, what's your name?
Dr. Tamika Brown.
Dr. Tamika Brown, what is your question?
It is well documented that Greenville County is one of the areas where it is very difficult to rise above poverty. Can someone from the panel share how we are addressing this need in our community?
Thank you.
Please.
Yeah, she's absolutely right. Greenville has a horrible record of raising those in the lowest fifth, if we're going to use a data point, of poverty out of poverty. And you cannot rise out of poverty unless you have the basic needs of human living, and that would be access to housing, access to a good education, right, and access to good jobs. So I think it's no secret that Greenville is growing. Our unemployment rate is incredibly low, so the access to jobs is there. It's having the training for it or the qualifications for it and the way to get to it, the transportation to it, reliable transportation. So we're working on that every day. I think like never before there's a heightened awareness of the point that was just made that everybody, because you were born into poverty, absolutely does not mean you are destined to stay in poverty. But unless the community provides that opportunity to lift them up, I don't think we can get there. But if any community can, I have faith the Greenville community can.
I think that we have a few more audience questions, so I want to invite up another member of the audience that might have a question. Do any members of our audience have a question that they would like to ask? Well, hello. Hi. Please share your name with us.
I am Melody Samuel, and I am a proud product of District 25. And it's near and dear to my heart to see our children thrive and have the same opportunities. So this may be somewhat of a follow-up from what the other individual just asked. But do you find that there are identified gaps and disparities in lower socioeconomics? Basically, is there equity as far as types of programs and focus on enhancing the curriculum development, particularly in the District 25 area?
I caught most of that. I would say that there is great need in the District 25 area, that there's a lot of research that shows, for example, in District 25, a lot of students of poverty, a lot of black and brown students. And some of the research shows that if a black student, for example, has a black educator in elementary school, then they're 39% more likely to graduate from high school and go to college. Yet, the teaching force is pretty much still the same. Now, teaching is very difficult and it's hard to recruit any teachers right now, but we do know that if that is research as a statistic, then we need targeted efforts to make that a reality so that we can have more students. I would say follow the data, look at the disparities, and put programs and things into place that truly work. I would also say that one of the things in District 25, it has a reputation of some sort of being dangerous or downtrodden or whatnot. But when you look at District 25, there are a lot of entrepreneurs, there is a lot of culture, and when you go to any city like a Greenville that is becoming big, you see a cultural space, and Greenville has a unique opportunity not only to tout its downtown area, but it has an opportunity really to tout Whitehorse Road and District 25 because it is a cultural hub of multiple people representing multiple countries and multiple languages, multiple backgrounds with different skill sets. And I see it as a space where our students, if they can really get the opportunities to express their artistic ability, that District 25 could be full of art that is representative of the people that are in that community. Music that's in that area. Businesses and so forth, the people who have historically been in the area and people who are new to that area. And so I see it more of as an opportunity. But again, as we've been saying all night, it's going to take the community doing it. It's going to take the school district and the surrounding charter and private schools making a concerted effort to make sure that the teaching force and the staff represent and look like and understand the backgrounds of our students. But it's also going to take the community stepping up and saying, what can this community be? Because the school can't do it alone. We've both got to be doing it in order to make it the vision that it can become.
It's fantastic. And Dr. Hampton, it seems to be, again, continues to be a gap between the conversation and your work for students to move forward. How might you respond to that question about balancing inequity and opportunity in the district specifically?
So, and again, my perspective has always been higher ed.
Sure.
But I think Greenville has a unique opportunity with so many higher education institutions around to really support efforts in the community to branch out, to lift students and meet students where they are. This area is the county itself is always one of the examples we talk about in Columbia of areas of great industry, great growth, cultural arts. I think there's a real opportunity for these schools, these colleges up here, to again do their part in the community, to reach down and support those efforts.
You see a lot of investment from higher ed to community? Or would you like to, you do say that already?
Yes.
You'd just like to see more out of it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Fantastic.
Can I give a quick shout out to Greenville Technical College? Greenville Technical College is really making strides in ensuring that all students, especially in District 25, are obtaining the dual enrollment, those certifications and those 2-year degrees. A couple of years ago, they released a program where, as a result of African American males being at the bottom of achievement and completion for Greenville Tech, and now African American males sit at the top of completion and enrollment as a result of doing some intentional efforts. And they have now launched an Accelerate U initiative where they're partnering with the school district, 4 schools in District 25, where students in this area have a unique opportunity to go to any Greenville Technical College campus during the day, during their school day, be bussed over there to take those classes and back. And that is only a unique opportunity being provided to students in District 25.
Please, Ms. Samuel, thank you.
Well, speaking of Greenville, Technical College, we want to turn it over to an audience member who works there and is supporting students in the area. So please share your name and ask your question.
Yes, my name is Dominique Loris, and I was just coming up to comment about how Greenville Tech's doing the Accelerated Youth program to get the high schoolers at Greenville Tech at a younger age so that they can graduate with those credentials. So I just wanted to point that out.
Thank you for your work. Of course.
And I might add Greenville Tech's investment in their facilities. If you have a chance and are able to tour some of their new facilities, I'm not going to use the right terms for the buildings, but the Life Sciences building on the Barton campus is lights out, one of the best facilities I've seen. The Advanced Manufacturing facility over near CUI Car is just incredible. And again, they are helping build that workforce for those companies that come to people like me and my colleagues and say, will you have the workforce for us? Because we're paying well, right? These are good jobs, and Greenville Tech is critical to us being able to provide that workforce. They're a great partner.
You all have mentioned some good work that's already happening, and then there's that hidden word, more, do more. How do you do more when your plate is full with funding and support and accountability? What does more look like when your plate is full in your community? How does one find more space if they feel that their plate is full already? Any suggestions?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
I'll probably apologize. Let me be more clear. You've always mentioned some really impressive things that have been happening in the community, but there's always seems to be more needed for it to happen. And I'm wondering how you communicate that with someone in the community that they can stretch a little bit further to add a little bit more to reach these goals you are pursuing. How might you communicate that? What might you say? Can you give us an example of what that conversation might look like to encourage others to get involved?
I think you got to show by example. I mean, the school district has great metrics on performance. Things seem to be getting better each year. I think it's great to pat ourselves on the back for the things that are in play right now, but I don't think anyone would disagree. I hope they wouldn't disagree that we do wake up saying, now what's next? What's next? The job will not be finished anytime. If we don't say what's next and keep working towards that next, then what are we doing for Nautica, and what are we doing for someone who's, born today that 20 years from now are going to need those opportunities?
And I'm a proponent of work smarter, not harder. And so I believe that the answers always lie within the community. And so any problem that we have, the solutions exist in the community that's being impacted by it. And so we have to work in these collaboratives, and we've got to be working together, because I don't have to show up for everything. But if I know I'm part of a collaborative of folks, of 20 of us in a neighborhood, or 20 parents, or 20 educators, then one of us can show up. One of us can do the next thing, And it may be your turn next, but I can pause so I have time to do other things, right? And so I believe that if we're not working together, then we're not working smarter. And so we've got to be doing that so we don't always feel like we've got to be the one to be sitting in these seats. We got to be the ones that are delivering the message. Other people can too.
And Ms. Samuel, please. And then after Ms. Samuel and this the participant, we want to hear from Ms. Jameson as well, as a student who's taking all this in. Please, Ms. Samuel.
We do have another question from a member of our live audience, and I want to give her the opportunity to say her name and also ask the question.
My name is Melissa Williams. Excuse me, getting over all of the pollen. My question actually goes back to the topic of readiness that has come up a lot in this conversation tonight, and I have a rising kindergartner, and it might seem like I am ahead of the game, but I would like to know, as a parent, what markers should I be looking for, and how can you provide that information to young parents who are just trying to make sure that we have our children on the right track so they're not starting out behind the starting line?
Powerful question. How do I know my child is ready? What do I need to do to make sure my child is ready?
This is a fantastic question, and I really wish that my colleague Dr. May were here because she would have a laundry list of things to tell you. I'm very much the data guy and the research guy, but I will say that your educators at the school, educators at the district should be able to answer those questions clearly. And actually, just today I got to have a conversation with a person at the Department of Ed who is spearheading their new assessment literacy effort. And so one of the things that I've seen in teacher education and teaching assessment to teacher candidates is there's so much technical detail surrounding the assessments that we give and the data that we have that it's almost like an additional separate course to be able to translate that to someone who isn't directly trained in that detail, right? And so I'm really excited to see some of the efforts that are going towards assessment literacy that is specifically designed to help with communicating to parents and community members, what does this data mean?
Right.
And what should I do about it, right? Because that's the important thing. I can look at a correlation coefficient and it means something to me, but a percentile rank or like all the numbers that exist on these score reports don't necessarily mean something to the people that we're sending it home to. So we really, as educators, need to make sure that we're supporting that understanding and following it up with what the next steps are from there.
What does this data mean and what should I do about it? Ms. Jameson, you and your peers in the world of readiness. You know, the conversation, am I ready? Or, you know, it encourages empowerment, it encourages strength, it encourages moving on to higher ed. Talk to us about readiness as you all sit around in your own peer group. You'll have a conversation about, am I ready, am I not ready, am I where I need to be?
Me and my peers, we do. When I first started high school, I thought it was just come to school, pass your classes, go to college, go to work. But now, like being here, I feel like there's so much more that we have to do. And earlier, you mentioned that you need to lead by example. I feel like being here, it motivates me to lead by example. And I feel like by leading by example, I could get more people to be leaders to other people, whether it's in a different community, a different school. I just feel like it's an amazing opportunity. And I feel like life throws a lot of curveballs, so you won't always be ready, but it's good to know what you want to do at some point.
Sounds like you'll be having a lot of coffee chats with your peers after school. Just sometimes healthy conversation drives that thinking. You know, Dr. Hampton, I've always tried to grab and understand what college readiness actually means. I mean, you have mature students, immature students. You have, talk to us about what college readiness means, please.
Well, so I think when we're talking about our high school students and when they're coming out college ready, I think the main thing is can you put them in that environment? Can you put them on that campus or in that classroom, and they can not feel overwhelmed? They can understand where they need to go to get that support. I see a lot of opportunities for students when we talk about college ready. and again, I'm a huge workforce proponent as well, so I don't want to say that college is where every student should go. But I do think there's an opportunity for every student to go to a college. Now, 2-year, 4-year, again, as Commissioner of Higher Education staff, we don't really push one out of the other. But I think we're really trying to make that connection between being college ready and post-secondary, and then moving into the workforce, whether it's after 1 year, 2 year, 4 years. I think we're just trying to help students make those connections. Some of the things that we see is students that in that senior year, they're avoiding a math class. That's something we see a little too much of. And there was even some legislation, I think, a while ago to make students take a math class and an English class in the senior year. It didn't pass, but I think people started to understand, the purpose of it or the point of it. I think students just need to continue, and our educators need to continue to track students, support students where they are, help students make those hard decisions along with their families about what college they should try to go to, should they take a break and work. All those things should be on the table. But I think college ready is not just what you're doing in the classroom, it's also are you ready to take on that next step in life.
Fantastic, thank you. Ms. Samuel, please.
I love that we are having this conversation, not only in this room, but also online. And we have a question for Nautica. Financial literacy hasn't quite come up yet. What are your thoughts about financial literacy among students? Are you excited about the required credit hour? Do you think that your peers understand the importance of having good financial management skills?
I took a financial class last year, and I feel like it was very helpful. I feel like every student should most definitely take a financial literacy class because it teaches you more than how to make money and how to spend money. It teaches you how to build generational wealth and how even if you have money, there's always an opportunity to make more money. And I feel like that's something that a lot of students need because I feel like society look at especially my generation as, oh, they're just gonna spend their money on a lot of stuff that they don't need. But I feel like a financial literacy class can prepare you and it can teach you how to beat the odds of what society thinks of you.
The fact that she used the term build generational wealth, I mean, hello, huge example. And, if I could send a message down to Columbia and the commission, I just wish they had made it a full credit instead of a half credit required. Only because a half credit is complex in the block scheduling.
Sure.
And that again is a whole nother topic. And I think a full credit, there's enough material to fill a full credit. This also ties to the expense of post-secondary education. So if a student is choosing post-secondary, be it 2-year, 4-year, there's possibly and likely, in fact, an expense to it. And if they have had no academic training in personal finance, how are we to expect them to understand the concept of loans will fall on you, And I think we've done a tremendous disservice over a generation of producing a lot of student debt through students being uninformed on a decision that was made when they were 18. And so I think, I commend South Carolina for requiring that. I think that's been welcomed and just make it a full credit and it'd be easier to fit into the schedule. And a lot of students, this is one more thing I do want to add. Students tend to want to knock some of those credits out in their freshman year. I'll just get that out of the way. And I was talking to some students about it and I said, I don't think you should be taking personal finance. No offense if you took it in your freshman year, but you should have money of your own when you take personal finance, whether that came from a job, savings, whatever it is, to manage something. If you've earned some, if you've been in the, working after you were 15, then you can kind of appreciate what a dollar means.
Please.
I love this conversation, and I certainly wish that I would have had a financial literacy class when I was in high school. But continuing the conversation with our audience, you have a question. Can you please share your name and your question with our panelists?
My name is Maurice Grady. I'm the Academic Program Director for the Greenville Tech Industrial Electricity and HVAC programs. I want to have, it's twofold, it's a comment and a question. First of all, thank you for having us here today. It's a wonderful opportunity to get our voices heard and get some things cleared the air. One thing, since I'm in the trades, I was wondering if We're going to look into our infrastructure, meaning I know we need doctors and lawyers and the like, but to focus on our tradesmen out there. We have a large, population of blue-collar workers, and we need to see, and we're having a very, very high attrition rate as we speak right now, and we're working diligently and hard to maintain these roles. And I just wanted to see how we're going to pay attention to those.
Let's turn to our panelists.
Please, Dr.
Yeah, so this is a fantastic question, and one of the opportunities that we have as Education Oversight Committee staff is to contribute to the ongoing coordinated council on workforce development and the work that group, this coalition of state leaders, as it were, is doing to figure out what are the metrics that we need to understand the needs in our workforce and to measure how well we're progressing towards meeting them in a way that's healthy for our state. And some of those metrics do include some high-value credentials and the rates at which those are being attained, and that really does include a regional look at what are the needs in these regions. So a high-value credential in this region might not be the same as a high-value credential in this region because of the local nature of those needs.
Sure.
And so, although I cannot speak in great detail about the substance of those conversations, I can tell you that the important conversations are being had surrounding those issues, and I really appreciate raising the question.
The idea of workforce development and education and being aligned and working together as opposed to go to college, don't go to college. The idea that these are the certifications we need, this is what we need. They're aligned. That sounds like you're saying they're aligned, the workforce and education and what's needed.
Well, and again, don't forget how housing plays into that. So very recently, the state legislature, the governor signed into law that a portion of taxes received on hotel stays, so we call it accommodations tax, which by law has only been, up until this bill, could only be used for tourism related expenditures. In other words, what's earned on tourism can be spent on tourism, building the tourism industry. But I think enough people spoke out that industry of tourism, which is very important in the city of Greenville, relies on a workforce. And you know, we have a great downtown. You mentioned our downtown. A lot of that is restaurants, a lot of that is hotels, and those rely on a workforce. So if you enjoy your meal at XYZ restaurant, you know, there's a lot of staff that went into that meal, and that staff has to have somewhere to live. All that to say is that now a portion of accommodations tax, which are paid by tourists staying in our hotels, can be used to develop affordable and workforce housing. And my vision, we in the city has actually put that into play to purchase property to build housing. You know, if we could provide housing for workforce that supports the industry that it's close to, then aren't we connecting the dots better? Now, to the point of the previous question of the Greenville Tech person, I think they struggled a bit with, well, which workforce? Is this housing only available to, say, restaurant workers or hotel staff? Well, if the hotel's elevator breaks down or air conditioning breaks down, it requires HVAC, that HVAC trained person is a lot more important than, you know, whoever the chef is. So tourism relies on a workforce across all spectrums, all spectrums. So, you know, it's connecting those entities. It's all interrelated.
Please, real quick, please.
I was going to say, we haven't talked about this tonight, I don't believe, but mental health in general. So when we're talking about the quality of the workforce in general, one thing that we have seen in our data is between 2020 and 2023, we saw a 200% increase in psychosocial disorders from our students. That's anxiety, depression, ADHD, and so forth. Another thing that research has shown recently is that we're living in the most disconnected generation. So one of the things that a health professional recently told me is that by the year 2030, CNAs, certified nursing assistants, those people who take their time, care, and attention that you spend the most time with before you get to maybe a RN or a doctor, those CNAs require people who understand people and require connection. By the year 2030, that will be the #1 needed medical professional. But we're living in a generation of students and kids who are least connected. So who's going to fill those positions? So we can talk about also the training aspect of it, but we also need to be talking about what we're doing around mental health and making sure our students have the mental capacity to handle the jobs that will be vacant in the future.
Fantastic point. That's, yeah, the idea of filling that gap, definitely. Please, Ms. Samuel.
Speaking of filling in the gaps, we have many educators and administrators in our audience today, and I'm so excited that you decided to join us today. Can you please share a little bit more about who you are and what you do in our community, and then you can have the opportunity to ask our panel a question.
Sure. Good evening. My name is Dr. Carlos Grant. I serve proudly as the principal of Wade Hampton High School here in Greenville County Schools, and also one of the co-founders of Bold Leadership Network. One of the things that we know for student achievement, the #1 strategy is an effective teacher in the classroom. And so we know that, and that's one of the key pieces of designing education for young people. Public charter schools have leeway within the state of South Carolina to have more leeway with hiring uncertified teachers towards their certification to get more years and not less penalized when it comes to state report card accountability. I guess my question is, even with the current alternative pathways that we have in the state of South Carolina through PACE and through GATE here in Greenville County, have charter schools figured it out? Is that the right medium, in your opinion, to that, or is that the right gatekeeper that they currently have? And I think it's 30% they're allowed to have on the staff uncertified.
So I think that's an incredibly important question. I'm not too sure if it aligns in the purview of your expertise. Does anyone want to speak to it specifically? Or should we definitely, as SCETV, will respond at a later date, but anyone have anything specific to that question? If not, we'll attend to that question. We don't want to ignore that question at all. But
yeah, it's not specifically my expertise, but I will say that I would really want to follow the data. That's a term that's been said here before, and I would want to really understand the degree to which the outcomes are where they are supposed to be with those approaches. So I don't know that, but I know that there's probably data, and I want to look.
Yeah, definitely.
And I can share my personal opinion. In 2020, my last year of principalship, I was sent on a recruitment trip to an HBCU in lower state of South Carolina. And as I sat in that recruitment space for future teachers, there weren't many coming my direction, and I didn't understand why. And so eventually the clinical professor came through and said, well, you probably don't see many because we don't allow them to come speak to you all if they haven't passed the teaching examination. So students who have it in their heart to teach, have done 4 years of classes, but they haven't passed this one exam, they're not allowed to come speak to us. And so I know right now we have a place, people who've been in the industry, maybe you've been an engineer and now you want to teach. And so now you have the knowledge to go pass this test because you know how to pass, you know the content, and then you get put in the classroom. That doesn't necessarily mean you're going to do any better because do you understand kids and teaching methodologies and schools and how it functions and community. But on the other hand, we want to allow educators, teach students who have gone to school to become educators, gone through 4 years, have it in their hearts to teach, understand students, the ability to come in classroom. So I would say from my perspective that I'm not sure if that's the right answer, but I do feel like there are some alternative solutions that could be put in place to make sure that we do and can fill those seats with quality people.
Thank you. Thank you. And your perspective definitely matters, and it's definitely an important topic. Ms. Samuel, please.
Well, we know how important it is to have passionate people as educators, but we also need passionate community leaders. So I would love for you to introduce yourself and share your question with the panel.
Absolutely. So my name is Alicia Brewster, and I am the parent of 3 children, 2 of which have graduated from Greenville County Schools and 1 who is on her way, and also get the great honor of leading the Greenville Mentoring Collaborative. We are supporting mentoring organizations in our community to ensure that young people have the supports that they need. And one of the reasons I'm so passionate about that in particular is because my children had a really strong supportive community, including parents who were there in their lives, and wonderful schools that they were able to go through and be able to get to their goals in life. And so my question is really, because I love to hear from students, is to hear from the student about what has been, or what is maybe your greatest concern about our current education system, and from your perspective, what are we doing well in public education?
I feel like, I'm gonna start with the good part. I feel like, well, there's a good selection of classes to take, because not everybody is the same person and not everybody learns the same way. So I feel like having a diverse group of classes allows better success for students to graduate, because we still take the core classes that we need to graduate, and then having those diverse electives makes school fun. Like, school shouldn't be hard. It should be somewhere where you can have fun as well as learn. And I feel like schools in general, having that diverse selection of electives makes school better. And concerns that I have about school, I feel like some of my classes that I take, they have a lot of students in there, which reduces like the individualized attention that each student get. And I feel like if we had more teachers teaching those classes, it could increase the individual attention that each child get, which would, I believe personally, would increase our graduation rate.
I just, something about that statement, school shouldn't be hard. You know, challenging, yes, but hard. There shouldn't be any unknown, you know, the dollars, the spendings, the support, the resource. That should be known information. But that's hard. Challenge in the classroom is one thing to challenge you as a human being, but hard, a lot of unknown variables that you should have access to, just like every parent. Any final statements before we close? Any final statements from each of you? Just down the line really quickly. Final statements, dollars, decisions, partnership. Please, Dr. Lavery.
So the one thing that keeps occurring to me as I'm listening to this conversation, and again, I'm going to go back to our Batois schools that we've been studying. One of the things that really stood out to me is that I never heard anybody talk about my kids and your kids. They were all our kids, right? Even teachers at a higher grade level that hadn't even taught these kids yet, those kids are my kids. They're all our kids. And this shared sense of ownership, I'm hearing reflected in some of the community partnerships that we're talking about. I'm hearing reflected in the language of some of the questions. I'm hearing it reflected in just this entire conversation. And particularly, Councilwoman, to your point about even if you don't have kids in the school, those are still your schools. And the kids in the school are sort of in that way your kids, right? And you know, all of the problems, all of the challenges, all of the issues that we face as humans, we can face together.
Fantastic, thank you. Dr. Hampton, any closing words for us?
Not a ton. I just think conversations like this are really important. I think folks don't know what they don't know. And mediums like this to get that conversation going, I think are key. Always being aware of what's around you and making people aware of what support is out there, I think is how we continue to move the state forward, especially with education. So I just commend ETV for putting this together and having this conversation.
And thank you for having us, and thank you for being here. Ms. Jameson.
I just think that students should be like more involved in what's going on around them. I feel like as students, our main concern is coming to school, but like this conversation, I feel like this is something that students should know because it does impact us.
Fantastic, thank you. Councilwoman.
Well, excuse me, it's been an honor to be with all of y'all. You know, again, I think I mentioned my kids were products of the Greenville County School District system and are living their best life now, you know, partly as a result. So I'm a big believer in the public school. I myself was not a product of a public school system, and I'm immensely proud of the Greenville County School District. I think it's really, you made a point about going to school board meetings. I can't remember someone who said that. And understanding that flow of money is important. There's this perception that it's a, you know, a funnel of money, of an incredible amount of money. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention that we have a very low tax rate in South Carolina. We're proud of that, we're preserving that. But as a result, our per pupil spending, it doesn't compare to a lot of other states. You know, we're doing a lot with what we have. And to understand that money flow, Dr. Royster is the superintendent of the Greenville County Schools, recently gave a joint presentation to Greenville City Council, and all the other municipalities were invited as well as the county council. And he was showing exactly their funding streams, where it was going, their challenges and all that, because I think that's the way the governmental entities of Greenville County and the municipalities all want to work together and recognize that the school district needs our help as well. So we're there as a partner for them. And for the community to understand that spending is very helpful, I think, and it's there for, it's available to you. Understand it and know where the challenges are and where the opportunities are.
Fantastic. Thank you.
And I would say bold is a choice. And I say that because we have to boldly show up for our students. We have to boldly show up for our community. We have to boldly have conversations that we may not want to have. And you know, we use that line to say, you know, it takes courage, it takes innovation. Sometimes it takes not being most popular. But when we're doing what's best for our students, then we have to be bold in doing it. And so I say bold is a choice, and we all have a choice to do it. So I hope everyone chooses to be vocal for our kids.
That's fantastic. I want to thank each of the panelists. That was absolutely fantastic. Just a good, healthy discussion. Before we close, I want to pass the mic to Ms. Samuel, please.
Well, I just want to say thank you again to our amazing panelists, but also to our audience in person here and online. We thank you for streaming live on Facebook, and we want to continue this conversation. We don't want it to end here. So if you have questions, continue to drop those in our comments. We want to be sure that our panelists and the SCE TV is able to answer those questions, but also we want to hear your questions for our next community forum on education. So thank you for tuning in, and don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe so that you can continue engaging in conversation with us. Thank you. Dr. Harris?
Thank you very much. And I also want to thank the audience as well. Thank you for being a part of this conversation today. The success of our schools and students depends on our collective effort. We encourage you to stay engaged and continue to advocate for the changes and support that will shape a stronger and brighter future for South Carolina's educational system. Tonight's forum will be available for on-demand viewing at scetv.org/edforum and on our digital platforms. Follow South Carolina ETV on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, as she said, for more information about our 2025 tour. And let's keep the information going. Let's keep it going on and on until we see these differences actually happening. Good night, everyone. Thank you.